All right, before we get started today, I just wanted to take a moment and give a big shout out to our sponsor today, the Great Courses Plus. The Great Courses Plus is a place where you can go to learn about just about anything.
Pretty much anything.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of learning over the COVID-19 social distancing, pandemic lockdown, etc.
Yeah, we're not alone there. I think a lot of people have.
You've had a lot of time to sit on your computer, on your handheld and watch Great Courses Plus. I've been learning a little bit about photography. It's been helping me along with my DSLR. What have you been checking out?
Well, I've been using Great Courses Plus for prepping for this show, which is...
so it's really coming in handy.
Well,
for
I
you.
mean, we talked about it before with Bill Nye, and then of course this show today we're talking about life outside of this planet. So why not go to Life in Our Universe with Professor Laird Close? And you're learning about astrobiology, which is going to be a big topic of what we're discussing today. So basically for me, the Great Courses Plus has been a way to prep for the show because we're often talking to super smart thought leaders and professors, which we are today.
Wow, it's how smart people prepare for their shows. The Great Courses Plus. They've got thousands of lectures on almost any topic imaginable, from philosophy to astrophysics to learning to speak Spanish. And new courses are added all the time, so there's something for everyone. Plus, every course is presented, like Richard said, by subject matter experts from top universities and institutions. And you can watch or listen from your phone or TV with the Great Courses Plus app at any time from anywhere in the world. Make the most of your time. Keep learning with the Great Courses Plus. They're offering fans of this show an amazing deal, an entire month of access for free. Free? This limited time offer won't last. Sign up today to get started. Go to thegreatcoursesplus.com/whatif. Don't wait. Thegreatcoursesplus.com/whatif. Once again, that's thegreatcoursesplus.com/whatif.
And it's going to come in handy, but also as we're talking about, you're going to need to learn a little to be able to follow this particular show today, because we're talking about something that's pretty far out there, but you're in good hands because our guest today will also be somebody that will be able to help us look smarter by the end of today's show.
Amazing. Let's get to the show.
Well, it was about 4 years or even more. That much work that led to the announcement. It started out around 2015, 2016 with a crazy idea by Professor Jane Greaves from the UK. She really went out on a limb and she wanted to search for signs of life on Venus. Now that may seem all good and legit to you, but it's very fringe. Honestly, searching for signs of life on Venus, because it's so harsh for any kind of life as we know it. It's really, really out there.
So, Pete, it wouldn't be the first time we've discussed the possibility of extraterrestrial life on this show. Seems like every week we're discussing it.
People
these
love
days.
it.
Well, people love it, but also there's something in the air.
I love it.
And there's news about it, but then you hear the recent news, the breaking news about potential life on the planet Venus. What did you make of that when you first heard about that?
Well, it certainly got that wow factor because this is the first discovery and in a planet right next to us. Incredible.
Yes.
People have always talked about, search for extraterrestrial life and, we think this could happen over here or this might be happening on this exoplanet. We don't know. But this is almost proof right next door.
Yes.
So
on a planet that's primarily not known for, like we talk about sending probes to Mars all the time. We talk about exoplanets, to your point. We don't talk about going to Venus because...
I'll tell you why.
Yes.
You can't go to Venus because its temperatures get up to 880 degrees Fahrenheit. So the Russians have sent things to Venus before, but the temperature's hot enough to melt lead. So you land on there.
Yikes.
You can probably get, I think they got maybe 50 minutes of transmission from Venus, and then... So if you're going to spend all that money to go to Venus, it's for a probe. If you land the probe, it's for a probe that's only going to last for about an hour, and then it's gone.
So for those people that don't know, because again, you might have just heard the word Venus or life or whatever, but it's not necessarily the discovery of ET, the extraterrestrial, but it's significant for those people who don't know what is the story essentially.
Yeah, if you were under a rock this week or only reading the first 10 stories of your Instagram,
Yes.
You probably missed any of the myriad of headlines on saying such things as astronomers may have found signature of life on Venus. Scientists detect possible signs of life on Venus. Phosphine detected in the atmosphere on Venus. Possible sign of life. Will NASA choose Venus mission after phosphine discovery?
That would make sense. It's actually a shorter trip than Mars.
It is, but I'm not the person to answer that question.
Well, I would, and no disrespect to you or to me, I am also not the person to answer that question. We need an astronomer. We need an astronomer, Pete, who is one of the foremost astronomers in the world around this type of stuff.
Well, I think you know that that's our guest here on the show today.
Professor Sara Seager.
Today's guest is one of the foremost astronomers on Venus or any other planet and co-author of the Nature Astronomy paper that's causing all the fuss, MIT Professor Sara Seager. She was born and grew up in Toronto, Canada. Among her first memories was a trip to a star party with her father to see the moon through a telescope. She is the class of 1941 Professor of Planetary Science, Professor of Physics, and Professor of Aeronautics and Astronautics at MIT. Her past research is credited with laying the foundation for the field of exoplanet atmospheres, while her current research focuses on exoplanet atmospheres and the future search for signs of life by way of atmospheric biosignature gases. Before joining MIT in 2007, Professor Seager spent 4 years on the senior research staff at the Carnegie Institution of Washington, preceded by 3 years at the Institution for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. Her PhD is from Harvard University and her BSc from the University of Toronto. Among other accolades, Professor Seager is a member of the National Academy of Sciences and a 2013 MacArthur Fellow. Professor Seager, welcome to What If Discuss. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
First question, how much have you slept in the last 7 days?
Well, I have time to sleep, but I haven't been able to sleep because my mind is just spinning with a million ideas.
It's been crazy busy for you though, right?
Mostly getting ready for the press conference that we had a couple days ago and just answering millions of questions. Like, it's incredible the response we've had, the interest from all kinds of journalists and programs all around the world.
Yeah, it was covered everywhere, which is great to see, because Peter and I talk about this on the show occasionally, where we'll see what we think is a massive development, about life and whatever, and it'll be like the seventh story on CNN or whatever. So this really did get, I think, the appropriate level of coverage.
Great.
As to be expected, you didn't just stumble into this. This wasn't just an overnight discovery. The team came at it from all angles just to make sure that everything was right. I mean, literally looking at it from different telescopes to prove your theories. Make sure that you were seeing what you were seeing. Maybe talk about this process.
Sure. Well, it was about 4 years or even more. That much work that led to the announcement. It started out around 2015, 2016. With a crazy idea by Professor Jane Greaves from the UK. She really went out on a limb and she wanted to search for signs of life on Venus. Now, that may seem all good and legit to you, but it's very fringe, honestly. Searching for signs of life on Venus, because it's so harsh for any kind of life as we know it. It's really, really out there. And she cased the scientific literature. She dug deep and looked for what gas would be suitable. And I'm so impressed with her because she came across these really obscure papers on phosphine, a gas that is not really made by anything other than humans, and it's associated with bacteria in oxygen-free environments. Now, in the meantime, my team had also found those obscure papers because we're working on the search for signs of life by way of gases that don't belong, for actually exoplanets, planets outside of our solar system. So Mutual Contact connected our teams about 2 years ago, and we've been working so hard on this ever since.
Well, obviously yielded results. This may come as a shock to you, not to Peter, but I wasn't familiar with phosphine prior to about a week ago.
No, I actually wasn't.
And so, of course, I did some Googling on the old magic box, and this is what came up. Phosphine, 1, is a colorless, flammable, extremely toxic gas. Not surprising, perhaps. It stinks is the other thing that apparently
stinks.
Smells like garlic. Can you confirm that, Professor Seager? Is that true?
Well, I can't confirm it for myself, of course, because as you said, it's toxic. We couldn't imagine just getting some and smelling it. I mean, I've read that phosphine, pure phosphine itself is odorless, apparently, but it's usually accompanied by a contaminant that gives it that bad smell.
So, and then the third thing, of course, is that it's formed by the action of a strong base or hot water on white phosphorus, or by the reaction of water with calcium phosphide. Now, the reason why this stuck out to me was if water is necessary in its formation, and we're talking, I know Venus, it's been theorized that there were oceans on Venus, millions of years ago. Nobody obviously knows that. But for us here on Earth, we always look to water as being that key indicator of potential life, life as we know it.
Yeah.
Is there any reason to believe that these two things could be connected? Because I know that right now, nobody really knows, as you said, what's sort of creating the phosphine.
Right. Well, I like that you picked a chemistry example, because also like everyone on social media is picking their own version, like chemistry example, how they think it could form. But you're right that Venus doesn't have water today. So that particular mechanism can't work. And there are other ways to form phosphine, like our solar system planets, Jupiter and Saturn, also have phosphine. But there, they have a lot of hydrogen, because phosphine is 1 phosphorus atom and 3 hydrogen atoms. So Jupiter and Saturn have not only a lot of hydrogen, but they also have high temperatures and pressures deep in their atmosphere where phosphine can form. So you're right that the one you picked doesn't work on Venus. I just gave you another example that doesn't work. And 2 of our key team members, William Baines and Janusz Petkowski, they did just that. They worked through every possibility and took a couple of years, wrote a 100-page tomb kind of paper on this. So pretty much everything someone could think of, we've had to work through and exclude.
Wow. It's a lot to unpack here. So this is not a discovery of intelligent alien life as we would describe it, but it's still incredibly significant if indeed it turns out to be confirmed through follow-up research, possibly sending a probe to Venus. What do you think is the most significant part of this discovery?
Well, it may seem a bit like boring or low-key to you, but what we can say is, we're confident we found the gas phosphine that doesn't belong in Venus's atmosphere. And on Earth, that gas is only associated with life. So I think really we can't answer your question specifically. It'll take a few years to really understand the full impact.
This is not a gas that's just located in atmospheres. It has to be produced by a bacteria.
On Earth, that's the case.
On Earth, right. Okay.
Well, I was going to say that, we're left with 2 possibilities that are equally preposterous. One is that, it may be arrogant to say, but that there's a chemistry we don't know. There's something happening on the surface, or maybe the subsurface, or maybe even the atmosphere that we just don't know yet. But to me, that's kind of on the crazy side, but it's equally crazy that there could be life living in Venus's clouds making this phosphine. So we really are scratching our heads here.
Well, I'm going to take the crazy up a notch here, because I have 2 additional theories, really questions, because again, from an outsider's perspective, when I hear something like, there could be sort of a microbial life in the atmosphere on Venus. So initially, of course, we look at that, we say, well, the conditions on Venus for the type of life we know, that it just doesn't add up. But when I hear the descriptions of Earth, hundreds of millions, billions of years ago, I find it's somewhat similar. You hear about sort of more like smaller microbial forms of life. The temperatures here weren't necessarily conducive to life as we know it.
Different gases.
Now, over the course of, again, eons, that changed, and cut to, you have Peter and Richard sitting here. Is this possibly one of 2 things? Us looking in on the very beginnings of life on Venus that could, over hundreds of millions and billions of years, become what we know? Or could it be the other possibility that it used to have life as we know it, but no longer does?
I like your second possibility. It has life, used to have life as we know it, because we do believe that Venus did have liquid water oceans, as you said, billions of years ago. And life could have originated there just like it did on Earth. And it could have migrated to the clouds so that when Venus went through its catastrophic runaway greenhouse, it got so hot, all the oceans evaporated away and water got lost, that the life in the cloud, life on the surface would have died out because it became so hot, but life in the clouds could have survived. And just one little thing that adding to this story that you may not know about is that our own Earth has an aerial biosphere. We have bacteria that gets swept up from our Earth's surface, and it goes up into our clouds, and it lives there in or outside of the liquid droplets for about a week. It can be transported over continents, and then it rains back down. But our Earth has transient clouds, they come and go, whereas Venus has a permanent cloud cover.
When you talk about runaway greenhouse effect on Venus, is there any sort of parallels that you can draw to the future of Earth?
It's a great question, and it's a really hard kind of homework problem we sometimes assign to our students. We don't think our Earth will go through a runaway. Venus is much closer to the sun than we are, and that really made a difference for Venus because it receives a lot more heat.
Yeah. And now it's quite possible this discovery doesn't happen prior to a major change in how we've come to define life and understand life as we know it. Extremophiles. So we now know that life can exist in crazy cold temperatures under the ocean or in crazy hot temperatures, like in a volcano, and now apparently in sulfuric acid clouds on Venus. We've really changed our perception of what life can be.
Right. Well, we're still trying to stretch our minds on that one, because it's true that on Earth, life has defied all of our expectations. It's been found, as you said, in very extreme environments. But on Venus, it takes that extreme to way new level. I mean, the acid conditions in sulfuric acid they're way more acidic than anything on Earth. Millions, billions of times more acidic.
Well, I mean, there's obviously, I think, proportionate excitement around the world, but still, you guys are scientists, so you're always going to be a little, not skeptical, but you're certainly going to be controlled enthusiasm, because there's still a lot to figure out. And, prior to follow-up missions, et cetera, as we know, science works with going back and looking at something again.
Well, will there be some follow-up missions?
Well, that will be a question for Professor Seager on the other side. We're going to follow up with a few more questions about not only the discovery within the atmosphere of Venus, but some other really cool stuff. If you don't know already, Professor Seager is one of the foremost experts on exoplanets in the world. So we're going to talk about that and a little more after the break. So just sit tight, Professor Seager. We'll be back with a little more on the other side. I guess you click the link below, right?
Well, yeah, this is the conclusion of our video portion of the podcast. But if you want to get the extended audio version, then you would click on the link below. But if you're already listening to the audio version, then don't go looking around for a link, because there is no link. This is only for the video portion.
Yes, so just stand by. Professor Seager, where can people find your work and follow what you're doing?
Well, I have two websites you can take a look at. One of them is saraseager.com. The other one is called venuscloudlife.com. And you can also follow me on Twitter at profsaraseager.com, or you can search for me on Facebook.
How old is venuscloud.com?
2 days?
venuscloudlife.com. Correct, it's 2 days.
venuscloudlife.com.
Some foresight to
see, we should have got on that right away.
So we'll do the .ca.
Yes, we'll do the .ca. Thank you, Professor Seager. We'll talk to you a little bit later.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, well, we'll have more with Professor Sara Seager later in the audio version of the show. But first, Richard, I want to talk a little bit more about what we may have found here. We talk a little bit about extremophiles. That's kind of what I think it is. Things that can obviously live in high temperatures like this. And we found things like similar to this on Earth. It's not necessarily little green men on Venus that have, died and turned into phosphine gas.
No. I mean, it's to me, it's, again, it's a marker of where we're at historically, especially as it relates to science, because I don't know how old extremophiles are, but I'm familiar with the word for, let's say, 5 years, maybe 10 years.
I thought extremophiles were somebody who enjoys doing extreme sports or something like that.
Yes, or extreme X-Files fans.
Yeah.
Extremophile.
Yeah.
But I mean, for those who don't know, as you said, it's life that can exist in extreme temperatures, whether hot or cold. Why is that important? Well, it's important because, again, we had a very specific way we defined life before. So then that affected how we looked for life.
It was always something similar to us.
So if it doesn't have, the temperature is not room temperature and the perfect whatever, life can exist. So therefore it narrows how we look for life and where we look for life. Now we find here on Earth, life existing in the Arctic ice where we didn't think it could exist, in volcanoes and like massive hot whatever. So now we're like, oh, all these planets that we thought couldn't host any form of life, let's go back and look at those again. And I applaud anybody like, Professor Seager, in that her early work, and for those people who don't know, she's one of the foremost people on looking at the atmospheres of exoplanets. This was when people actually rolled their eyes at the idea of exoplanets existing. Like within her community, it was like,
it seems to me it's only been the last, for me, the last 10 years or so that people are actually believing in exoplanets and habitable zones and possibilities of life in other galaxies or in other solar systems.
So you have her and other people like her trailblazing at a time where people are like, come on, what are you looking for? There's no whatever. Cut to, we're in a time where not only do we understand that, we list about 4,000 exoplanets. I suspect by a year from now, it's going to be 400,000 exoplanets that we think are, whether it be in habitable zones or similar to Earth or whatever. And then you throw in extremophiles, meaning we start to look for life that doesn't necessarily look like us, but doesn't also necessarily look like phosphine on Venus. And we might end up discovering, sort of Star Trek-like, that there's a whole bunch of different ways bipedal intelligent life can exist in a universe. And it would start with us starting to look at this in a different way. And I think historically people will look back on this particular time, 2020, where people are looking at, this phosphine discovery in the atmosphere of Venus as critical in terms of how we look for life going forward.
Yeah, this is a turning point in our search for, I don't want to say extraterrestrial life, but I guess it is extraterrestrial life.
If it ain't here, it's extraterrestrial. So what does that look like? Is it small? Is it microbial? Is it Jabba the Hutt? I don't know. And Jimmy Crackcorn, and I don't care. But what I do know is this is significant. And it's people like Sara Seager and Jane Greaves and everybody else that are leading the way.
Well, that's it for today's video podcast, but I want you guys to all join us on next week's podcast because we continue the search for extraterrestrial life with Professor Andrew Simeon of SETI, which is
our old friends at SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And that search continues here on What If Discussed.
It does. There's more with Professor Sara Seager on the other half of What If Discussed, but that's the extended audio version. So for that, you'll need to click on the link below, and that'll take you to our extended audio cast with more of Professor Sara Seager. If you're listening to the audio podcast right now, we've had some people say, I can't find the link. You don't need the link because you're already listening to the audio podcast. So just continue to listen. And those of you who are watching, please join us next week. And that's it for today from What If Discussed.